Chelsea. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and boy, has it been a wild week or so in the US since I last filmed a video, and not in a good way. It has been a week of unrest and I think righteous fury over this country's systemic racism and police brutality, and all of that on top of this pandemic thing that we've been dealing with for several months now. And all of that makes, I think, what could have been a fairly straightforward April-May book haul a bit of a more complicated video to sit down and film. So because this is a book haul of the books I bought in April and May, I'm sort of going to mentally rewind here back to the beginning of those months. I'm going to talk about the books that I bought in the order that I bought them, and why I bought them and from where I bought them. And then by the end, we'll have caught up to the present day and sort of what I'm thinking about buying books going forward in the month of June. Here in New York, where I live, our stay-at-home thing went into effect in late March-ish. Gosh, I'm forgetting exactly when. But that meant that, starting in April was when I realized that if I wanted books, I had to buy them online from somewhere, and I decided I was going to support my local indie bookstores by purchasing books from them online. And for someone like me who does a lot of impulsive used book buying, that meant a sort of change in my thoughts about what books I wanted to buy. And so for the first time in maybe ever, I was actually thinking about what new releases I wanted to buy full price. It's not like I didn't buy a bunch of new books before, but those newer releases, new exciting things, were things that I've always been more likely to get from my library and then buy a copy if it turned out I loved it. But of course, my library has also been closed, and they have no recent updates on any plans to reopen, even as the city is planning to start phase 1 of reopening this week. So hence the title of this video and the decision to talk a bit about my intentional book buying. These are books that I decided I wanted, looking through my recent anticipated releases and also at the books I've added to my TBR recently, and thinking, which of these books do I want to have in my apartment now, while we're in lockdown? What do I want to get my hands on before the library is going to open again? What do I want to have available to me to read before it's reasonable to be doing a lot of book shopping out in person again, however long that's going to be? And so all of these books are relatively new releases, and they are all books that I either have read already since I bought them. I think I've read 2 of these 7 books already, and the others are all books that I would not mind picking up tomorrow. They're all things I'm sort of in the mood for and all things I'm very excited about. So then I decided that I was going to split the book buying that I was going to be doing between as many of the independent bookstores in the city that I know and love, that I've shopped at before, as I could. So I think I remember which bookstores I ordered each of these from. I might be getting this wrong, but in any case, I will leave a list of all of the New York City indie bookstores that I bought books from in the description down below. So the first order I placed was from McNally Jackson, and from them I ordered 2 books that were new releases that I'd been very hotly anticipating. The first is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, which I have already read and wrapped up. I read this for the stay-home reading rush, and it's in my wrap-up for that readathon. It is a heartwarming found family story with a queer romance about a magical orphanage on an island with some very special children and a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youths who is sent to investigate this orphanage. And then the second book is The City We Became by Nghi Jemisin, which is the first book in a new series of hers that I think is called The Great Cities. This is urban fantasy set in the same New York of her short story, The City Born Great. And I've not read this one yet, but I imagine that it's one I'm going to want to pick up pretty soon. The next pair of books I ordered were two Tor.com novellas, and I ordered these from Book Culture. The first is one that I had been keeping my eyes out for in stores for a very long time and hadn't seen stocked in any physical bookstores. One thing about buying books from bookstores online is that a bunch of them, not all of them, but a bunch of them are like keyed into book distribution networks so that you can order things that, you know, aren't physically in their store. So I bought a copy of Desdemona and the Deep by C.S.E. Cooney, which is, it was a 2019 release that I was so excited about, and I would have bought the first copy I saw in any bookstore, except I never saw it in any bookstores. This is blurbed by Patricia McKillop. It's supposed to be beautifully, poetically written, and it is a fantasy with a goblin underworld thing going on. It does look like it's got some economic themes to do with industrialization and the abuse of factory workers. So this could be really interesting, and I really want to read it. I haven't seen anyone on BookTube talk about it, I don't think. But also I've fallen really behind on a lot of friends' BookTube videos and wrap-ups and things, so if you've wrapped it up and you're like, Kelsey, did you not watch my video? Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't. I will be better. But regardless, this was a Tor.com novella release that I was very, very excited for when it was released and still hadn't gotten my hands on yet. And then the second Tor.com novella I bought in that order was a 2020 release that was on my anticipated releases of the first half of the year list. I'm gonna have to make another one of those for the second half of the year. But that is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey, which I believe is a sort of dystopian western. Next, I placed an order of a couple of books from Strand, which is a big enough bookstore in New York that I don't know if they really needed my money to survive a pandemic, but I ordered a couple books from them. One of them was a gift for someone who was having a birthday, so that one wasn't for me. The one in that order that was for me was The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. This was another one that was on my anticipated releases list. It's another Tor.com novella. It's really tiny. It is an Asian-inspired feminist court politics thing, and I have heard only great things about this. I've heard so many people say that they've loved it so far. So this one, again, I would be happy to pick this up and read this tomorrow if I had time. If only I had time to read all the books tomorrow. The next bookstore that I ordered two books from, one of which was not for me, it was a gift for someone else, is Books of Wonder, which is a children's bookstore. They sell everything from picture books up to YA. And they are a children's only bookstore where you can't order any book in print from their website. You have to order the books they have that are all kids or YA. But they are a great, great store, and they have a really extensive collection of books. And the one that I bought for myself was The Spinner of Dreams by K.A. Reynolds. This was a 2019 middle grade release, and it is this author's second book. Her first book was The Land of Yesterday, which I saw some very positive reviews of, not on BookTube. I don't think I saw anyone review it on BookTube, but elsewhere. That made me think, oh, I really wanted to read that book, except it was a book about grief. And so that was a book that I dropped off of my TBR after my mother died. This one, I forget exactly what the author said about this that made me think, oh my gosh, I absolutely need to read this. But I think this also deals with mental health in some capacity. It seems exceptionally whimsical, and you know me and whimsical middle grade, I gravitate towards it. And I think this is about a girl who is cursed by someone called the Fate Spinner and has to go on some sort of quest to try to lift the curse. And I did not realize when I ordered this that this is actually a signed copy. I was so surprised when that showed up. And it also came with a special bookmark. And I do love this cover so much. It reminds me of like Monument Valley, if you've played that game. That's what this cover looks like. And then the last new book purchase that arrived for me in May was a pre-order that was the only book for these 2 months that I did not buy from an indie bookstore because it was a pre-order and I had ordered it from Barnes & Noble. Still not Amazon, but Barnes & Noble. And that was Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the Murderbot novel that is a sequel to the novella series. I have already read this. I reread all 4 of the novellas in May and then read this book all back to back, all in 1 week. It was an intense Murderbot experience and I regret none of it. I did love this and I will be talking about it in a wrap-up, but I think the one thing I want to say is that if you, like me, finished the 4-book novella series thinking, gosh, my big unanswered question of this entire series is what the heck type of university does own a research transport ship like art, then this is the book for you. This is the Murderbot art book of your dreams. But that brings us up to the present day and this week and some more recent thoughts about accountability and spending and who you're giving your money to, which is obviously a much broader topic than just book buying, but because this is a book haul, I'm talking about book buying. So obviously, this wave of protests and heightened awareness for the Black Lives Matter movement has prompted a discussion about not just supporting small businesses during the pandemic, but supporting Black-owned businesses. And I think it is telling that none of the indie bookstores that I bought books from in April and May were Black-owned bookstores. There have been some lists going around that are great resources for helping to identify your local Black-owned bookstores, and if I can find one of the ones I've been looking at, I'll link it down below. And it's not that there aren't Black-owned bookstores in New York City, obviously, but the bookstores that I thought of that I was going to buy books from are stores that I had spent time in personally myself, and I spend a lot of my time in predominantly white neighborhoods. So obviously I have some unexamined biases about, the businesses I support in my city that are sort of geographically based on where I spend my time. And we're not spending time anywhere unless we're going out to protest right now. We're staying at home and doing all our book buying online. And so something I want to do looking forward to the month of June is to focus on ordering some books from Black-owned indie bookshops. So that's number 1. 2, obviously buy books from Black authors. Books, if I can, by Black queer authors because it's also Pride Month. So those are some things that I'm looking at moving forward to June, and we'll see how I do at that once I have another book haul in however long it is before I have another book haul. The other thing I want to address along the theme of intentional book buying is the really disappointing response that Book Outlet made on social media to the question of why they were only partnered with one Black booktuber as a vlogger friend, and their response to that on Twitter was really sort of shockingly inappropriate. And if you follow me, you know that I've bought books from Book Outlet before, and buying books from them has been one of the things that sort of enabled my indiscriminate cheap book acquiring habit. And I'm not permanently stopping my indiscriminate cheap book purchasing, because once stores are open again, I will obviously once again be buying cheap used books. I think that buying used books allows me to read a lot of books and authors that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise pick up. A lot of backlist books, a lot of things that aren't super hyped. But I have enough TBR books on my shelves, don't ask me to give you a number because I refuse to count them, that I certainly don't need to be buying boxes of books from Book Outlet anymore, so I'm not going to be buying books from them again for the foreseeable future unless something drastically changes with them. And it all sort of comes back to this theme that I'm thinking of intentional book buying, which is, of course, both the books you're buying and who you're buying them from. And so the final thought that I sort of want to leave with on this video is that yes, I expect I'll be impulse buying books again once once we're all physically out in the world someday browsing books in actual bookstores. But also that I want to sort of hold on to some of this intentionality of thinking about exactly what books I want to spend money on full price and who I want to buy them from. All of that being a sort of separate but related issue to like the idea of what books I want to read and spend my time on and use my platform to talk about. Anyhow, there's no real big takeaway here for me, not yet at least, but if you have thoughts on intentional book buying during pandemic times, during times of social unrest, leave a comment. Let's have a discussion. Also, if you've read any of these books that I talked about today, or if you're planning to, let me know. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.